The hour of convening having arrived, all members of this House will please report to work. All members of the House, please report to the floor of the House, the gallery, or room 341. The clerk will ring the bell. All members will report to the House. We are going to have the morning roll call. All members present will please say here or present loudly to signify their presence, and the clerk will unlock the machines and call the roll.
Alexander, Hanulowitz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Efstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Glanton, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, LaRicchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkle, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Washburn, Watson, Welsh, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yurda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernau, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kinnard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B., Moore C., Morris M., Nelson, Wen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaud, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M., Stevens M., Stevenson, Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
Here,
Bonner,
here,
Buckner,
here,
Burchett,
here,
Caldwell,
here,
Campbell,
here,
Cantrell,
here,
Dickerson,
here,
Dukes, Gamble, Gilliard,
here,
Gordon,
here,
Green,
here,
Gullett,
here,
Jones, J.B.,
here,
Kirby, Lott,
here,
Mathis,
here,
Metz, Momtahan, Park,
here,
Pruitt,
here,
Rogers, Singleton,
here,
Stovall,
here,
Williams R.,
here,
Honolowitz, Barr, Blackman, Clark D., Dreyer, Dubnik, Dukes, Fleming, Fry, Gamble, Gamble's here, Harrell, Holcomb, Holmes, Hobson, Hutchinson, Jones J., Jones V., Kirby, McLaurin, Momtahan, Wen, Rhodes, Rogers, Stevens R., Thomas A.M., Thomas E., Washburn, Williams A.
Members will look at the board to be sure it is accurate. We get Representative Dukes, Representative Blackman, any others? Any others? The clerk will lock the machines. Doorkeepers will close the doors and keep them closed. Well, good morning. Legislative Day 38 is here. The end is in sight. We will begin our day today with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 15th House District, Representative Matt Gamble. Representative Gamble.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. It's an honor to stand before you today and introduce my pastor, Dr. Patrick Latham from Tabernacle Baptist Church. Pastor Latham is fairly new to us. He started in January, so my heart goes out to any minister that changes churches right in the middle of what we've just come through with the COVID pandemic. He has previously pastored in Cedartown, Georgia, and in Lawton, Oklahoma. He and his wife, Laura Price Latham, are both originally from Marietta, Georgia. Patrick is a graduate of Walton High School in Cobb County, Gordon State College in Barnesville, and the University of Oklahoma, and also New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. Together, he and his wife have 3 children, Julianne, Will, and Levi, and Patrick considers it his life purpose to help connect with their ultimate purpose in life through Jesus Christ. Would you welcome Pastor Patrick Latham?
Thank you to Speaker Ralston, and thank you to my representative body for the opportunity to stand before you this morning. I want to share with you briefly on the subject of compassion, the need of the hour. Considering the different crises within our nation, it seems that compassion, empathy, sympathy towards one another, our fellow Georgians, our fellow Americans, is perhaps the greatest need of our time. Love and understanding seems to be what's required. Sergeant Shriver, the first director of the Peace Corps, once said, if American society could fully embrace this virtue we call love, it would be as if humanity discovered the usefulness of fire for a second time. Indeed, compassionate regard for one another can greatly benefit us. The question we face is, how can we have hearts that are full of such compassion, empathy, and sympathy? Is there any way for us to improve our human condition? Unfortunately, we have help and an example in the person of Jesus. In Mark 6:34, we read of an occasion in his ministry. Shortly after, Scripture describes an interaction with King Herod, the king of Judea at that time. It says Jesus went to travel with his closest followers, and he cut across the northern portion of the Sea of Galilee to find a place of rest. And when he went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and Jesus had compassion on them, for they were like sheep in his eyes, without a shepherd. Then he began to teach them many things. Jesus approached the seashore, and he saw a green grass ascending up into the hillside, and people wanting to catch a glimpse of Jesus and to hear him teach rushed down that seashore in their customary white garb. And in Jesus' eyes, they literally looked like sheep on the pasture side, but they figuratively looked like sheep as well. Jesus knew that the people needed a shepherd. He was well aware of Herod, who had been mentioned previously, and Herod's ruthless reign, his greed, his murderous behavior, his lust-driven and unjust lifestyle that is well spoken of in history. And so Jesus had compassion. The Greek language of the New Testament, the Koine Greek, the common Greek spread by Alexander, uses a strong word from the first century here. It's a word that speaks of the human bowels or the human intestines. It speaks of that type of emotion for another where you are moved on the inside. I can remember when I met my wife, we met at Schillings on the Square in Marietta, Georgia, and she would come in to visit sometimes at my lunch hour. I was a waiter there, and she would come in to get her lunch, and many times as she entered that restaurant, I would see her in the busyness of serving meals, and as I saw her, I got butterflies in my stomach. The Greeks were well aware that emotions seem to impact us on the inside. And so here the New Testament uses this word of a deep visceral feeling for the condition of another person, and it alludes to displays of sympathy and empathy. This word speaks of more than just concern for another person. It portrays a concern for another person that leads one to take action on behalf of that person. We see Jesus here had that compassion. He embodies the virtues of an ultimate leader. The Torah had used this picture to speak of the type of leadership that God's people needs in Numbers 27:17, and Christ embodied this compassion, and he stands today as an example for us. He reminds us that we can all benefit ourselves, our families, our communities, our state, our nation by embracing this type of compassion. May we learn to look at our fellow citizens through the lens of love. Though we may never agree ideologically or politically or economically on every issue, we can still seek to grow in our displays of empathy, sympathy, and compassion. If we can learn to take the proverbial walk in our fellow countrymen's shoes, we might be able to reach agreements and embody changes that will help us survive and thrive as a society. When compassion becomes the gold standard for our beliefs and behaviors, we can work together to form a better future for our loved ones, our communities, and our nation. And take note that Scripture also teaches Jesus is not just an example in this regard, he is an empowerment and an enablement as well. We may feel that of ourselves we can't muster up the compassion we need, but Scripture teaches us in Romans 5:5 that God's love can be poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given through Christ Jesus. So if we feel ill-equipped to show compassion and concern to others, may we humble ourselves, pray, and seek the person of Jesus. He can transform us spiritually. He can give us the perspective of love, patience, and forgiveness we need. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, during these turbulent times, help us to heed the example of Jesus. Help us to remember his great words that have echoed throughout the ages. This is my command: love one another as I have loved you. Work in our hearts and minds to give us greater compassion for one another, and use such love and compassion to bless the residents of Georgia and to make us into the people you want us to be. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. Let's say the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. The chair recognizes Chairman Hogan, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Information and Audits read the proceedings of the previous legislative day and found them to be correct. And furthermore, beer is a sign that God loves us and wants us to have a good time. Benjamin Franklin.
Representative Carpenter sure did appreciate that one. Chairman Hogan, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Mr. Burns, on number 59th, moves the following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Reports of standing committees. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1251 by Representative Mathiak, the 73rd, and Barr, the 103rd. Bill being titled an act to amend Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to health so as to repeal in its entirety Chapter 26.
Regulated Industries.
House Bill 1252 by Representative Scott of the 76th, Kendrick of the 93rd, Thomas of the 39th, Shannon of the 84th, Cannon of the 58th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 16 and Title 45 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions regarding coroners.
Judiciary.
House Resolution 1621 by Representative Bennett of the 94th, Hughley of the 136th, Hutchinson of the 107th, McLeod of the 105th, Carter of the 92nd, and others. A resolution supporting the policy recommendations set forth by the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus.
Governmental Affairs.
Senate Bill 502 by Senator Beach of the 21st, a bill being titled an act to amend an act reincorporating and recreating the city of Woodstock.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1250 by Representative Dreyer of the 59th, Gardner of the 57th, Bernal of the 77th, Drenner of the 85th, Wilkerson of the 38th, and others, a bill relating to the powers and duties of the Georgia Peace Officers Standards and Training Council, through second readers.
Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Representative Shaw Blackman of the 146th District, Chairman of the Committee on Governmental Affairs, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Governmental Affairs has had under consideration the following bills of the Senate. It is instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 322, due pass by committee substitute. Senate Bill 463, due pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Shaw Blackman of the 146th District, Chairman. Representative Jan Tankersley, the 160th District, Chairman of the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Locals, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Locals had under consideration the following bills of the House and the Senate. It has instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 1165, due pass. House Bill 1243, due pass. House Bill 1245, due pass. House Bill 1246, due pass. House Bill 1247, due pass. House Bill 1248, due pass. House Bill 1249, due pass. Senate Bill 510, due pass. House Bill 1242, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Jan Tankersley, the 160th District, Chairman. Representative Barry Fleming of the 121st District, Chairman of the Committee on Judiciary, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following bills of the Senate. It has instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 402, due pass. Senate Bill 289, due pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Barry Fleming of the 121st District, Chairman. That completes the reading of the reports of standing committees.
Okay, we're going on now to the local calendar. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills. One bill on the local calendar relates to homestead exemption and requires a recorded 2/3 roll call vote for passage. If there is no objection, we will vote on the local calendar as a whole with a recorded vote. Hearing none, it is so ordered. The clerk will read the local calendar.
House Bill 1165 by Representative Williams, the 168th, Liberty County. House Bill 1243 by Representative Davis, the 87th, DeKalb County. House Bill 1245 by Representative Burchetta, the 176th, Lanier County. House Bill 1246 by Representative Burchetta, the 176th, Ware County. House Bill 1247 by Representative Clark, the 147th, City of Warner Robins. House Bill 1248 by Representative Williams, the 148th, City of Cordele. House Bill 1249 by Representative Welch, the 110th, Henry County. Senate Bill 510 by Senator Tillery of the 19th, Wheeler County. House Bill 1242 by Representative Drenner of the 85th, City of Decatur.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bills? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall these bills now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bills on the local calendar will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines and call the roll.
Alexander, Anulowitz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Efstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Glanton, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, LaRicchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkel, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Washburn, Watson, Welch, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yurda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernau, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B., Morris C., Morris M., Nelson, Wen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaud, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M., Stevens M., Stevenson, Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
Yes.
Bonner,
Yes.
Buckner,
Yes.
Burchett,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
Yes.
Dickerson, Dukes,
Yes.
Gamble, Gilliard,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Gullett,
Yes.
Jones, J.B. Kirby, Lott,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Metz, Momtahan, Park, Pruitt,
Yes.
Rogers, Singleton,
Yes.
Stovall,
Yes.
Williams R.,
Yes.
Anulowitz, Bernal, Clark D., Cook, Dickerson, Douglas,
Yes.
Dreyer, Fleming, Gamble, Gilligan, Hutchinson, Jones, J.B., Jones, T., Kirby, Knight, McLaurin, Momtahan, Morris M., Huen, Oliver, Paris, Parrish, Perkel, Scoggins, Scott, Tarvin, Thomas A.M., Thomas E., Welch, Williams A., Williamson, Wilson.
All right, who, is that Representative Douglas? We got a few up in the gallery. Take your mask off so we can hear you. Representative Paris. Representative Paris votes yes. Any others? Okay, there does not appear to be any others. The clerk will lock the machines on the passage of the bills on the local calendar. The ayes are 155, the nays are 1. These bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. We're going on now to morning orders. Going on to morning orders, all members will please lower the decibel level of conversation and give respect and attention to the members in the well. The chair recognizes for a morning order Chairman McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to take just a second. I want to brag on the members of this House, and I also want to brag on the National Fair down at Perry. The fair is going to happen this fall. It'll be October the 8th through the 18th. If any of you have never been, you need to go just to see what a treasure that is for the state of Georgia and especially central Georgia. If you need any help figuring out how to get in or get there, find me, and we'll take care of you. On October the 17th, there will be a showdown, and let me explain just a second what that is. That's what this trophy is, and if you will count the plaques on it, we started this about 9 years ago, where we put 5 members of the House and 5 members of the Senate showing animals that the 4-H and FFA students teach them how to show. 7 out of 9 times, the House has whipped the Senate like a 3-year-old in Kmart. And I want to do that one more time for my last time down there doing this as Ag Chairman. But Representative Lynn Smith won the first one. Tom Kirby has run it twice. David Knight showed hogs and won it. Scott Turner showed a dairy cow. Even Stacey Abrams won it. And the last one to win, the last one we had was Representative Bonnie Rich. So if any of you have any questions about how much fun that is and how much you learn, there's probably 45 or 50 other ones of House members in here, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate y'all helping us spank the Senate. There's an oversight committee made up of members of this House, which is Representative Dickey, Jaspers, England, Perkle, and myself, that meet with the Fair Board. And I want to be serious just a second. COVID caused the fair to have to shut down. They have lost around $1 million worth of income due to the shows being canceled. We need to take care of the fairgrounds. It's a treasure for the state of Georgia. And I hope on October the 8th through the 18th, they have the biggest crowd they have ever had at the Georgia National Fair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the House Ethics Committee, Chairman Nix, for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition this morning to the gambling legislation that got presented during morning orders yesterday. You know, gambling is special. It doesn't follow the same rules as everything else. It's kind of like a horror movie. You know the monster's coming, but you never know when. And also, it's never dead. On Monday night, that thing got dug up, brushed the dirt off of it, gave it new clothes, and a stripped Senate resolution, and in 16 hours got presented in full in morning orders. Is that not special? And it gets bigger and better every year. You know what? They have to put some shiny objects on there that we can grab onto. This one's got a lock box. A lock box. It's really called an emergency powers fund, but we'd never remember that. But this one's got a lock box. And if I understand it, those benevolent gambling bosses are going to come down here and just going to stuff that with money, so if we need anything, we can just grab it and pull it out. And this one also has got another shiny object. It's got an opportunity fund. And that's kind of like a lock box, except it's all for education, so you can get in there if you need some of it. And it's all so simple. All we got to do is just put this thing on the ballot, and those big old gambling boys are going to come down, girls are going to come down there, and they're going to take care of us. All we got to do is trust them. Just trust them. They'll take care of us. You know, a serious question, though, what are we willing to sell Georgia for? You know, if this is so great, there are a number of states that have legalized casino gambling. Which one do we want to be like? Do we want to be like the one that's the #1 state in the country for business? Oh, no, wait a minute, that's Georgia. 7 years in a row. How about the ones that got AAA bond ratings that they managed to keep all the way through the Great Recession? I hadn't looked it up, but I don't think there are going to be many on that list. That's Georgia. How about the one that's got the model public scholarship fund in the country that others come and try to model after? Oh, wait a minute, that's the Hope Scholarship. That's Georgia. Would somebody please tell me again why we need to sell our state to the gambling bosses? I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Scott for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 793, Section 8 is proposed to eliminate an additional $7 million from the budget. Looking at Part 48.4, Veterans Benefit. This will eliminate all Georgia Department of Veterans Services Field Office and Appeals Division. Eliminating Field Office and Appeals Division would be an enormous mistake. Georgia Department of Veterans Affairs files approximately 85% of all VA claims and appeals for veterans within the state of Georgia. Georgia veterans depend on these offices to counsel and assist them in navigating veterans' benefits, file claims, and appeals on their behalf, and represent them during the hearings before the VA and Board of Veterans Appeals. The Georgia Department of Veterans Services Field Office and Appeals Division had 344,902 visits for Georgia veterans and completed 395,155 federal action claims and appeals and 88,603 state action. So half of this great state, 700,000 veterans population used the Department of Veterans Services this year alone. And this year's visit pre-COVID-19 were on track to exceed those numbers. Eliminating these 52 locations that Georgia veterans depend on to file for state veterans benefits, receive advice, file claims and appeals, and receive representation for hearings will create an enormous vacuum that will take years to recover from. We ask that the Budget Committee, to reconsider such deep cuts and destructive cuts to our veterans. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Jasmine Clark for a morning order.
Ladies and gentlemen in this chamber, we need to have a real come to Jesus moment about race. I don't get much time in the well, so I will try to accomplish in the next minute what has been brewing in our society for over 400 years. When we talked about the casino bill yesterday, Jim Crow laws were invoked. Quote, Jim Crow laws are alive and well, unquote. I was surprised to hear a comparison to a conservative radio talk show host telling alternative facts about the casino bill to a systemic set of laws used to enforce segregation and keep black people in the South in their place. These laws included denying black people the right to vote, the right to hold certain jobs, and the right to get an equitable education. So if you want to have an honest conversation about Jim Crow laws being alive and well, let's do that. I've got time. It is offensive to compare treacherous Jim Crow laws to some dude on the radio not liking your bill. It's about as offensive as equating civil rights hero Dr. Martin Luther King to Confederate generals who fought to uphold the institution of slavery. Racism is not always using the N-word. Racism is not always using the N-word. Sometimes It is making a mockery of our nation's painful and shameful past and those who still feel the effects of it today. I yield the well.
The House will maintain decorum. Representative Kennard, you got 10 seconds left. Do you want to be carried over till tomorrow? Okay. Put him on the list for tomorrow. We're now going on to the rules calendar. Going on to the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 371.
Senate Bill 371 by Senator Gooch, the 51st, Beach, the 21st, Jones, the 25th, Butler, the 55th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to officers in the Department of Transportation, so as to provide for state investment in railways and railroad facilities and equipment. This bill having referred to the Committee on Transportation. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the House Transportation Committee, Chairman Tanner, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be short with this bill. Senate Bill 371, you have saw this legislation several times over this course of this session. We passed a very similar bill out of the House. It's also already passed the Senate right when we came back into session on last week. And it got passed with some haste, and there had been a couple of things that GDOT wanted to change, and so this bill before you takes into consideration. All this bill does is simply provide a program area within the state budget for investment into freight and to rail. It doesn't require any investment, but it just has a program item in the state budget. This came out of the Freight and Logistics Commission that's met over the last year and a half as one of their recommendations as we continue to look for ways to move freight off of our interstate and public road system onto rail. And again, this is the same legislation. The only real difference is it gives a little bit more flexibility within the program area to GDOT. And again, all of this is subject to the appropriations process of future General Assemblies and to their direction. The only thing this does is put a program item into the budget. Mr. Speaker, with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You do not appear to have any questions.
Mr. Speaker, with that, I'll yield the well and ask for favorable consideration of Senate Bill 371. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 371 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine and call the roll.
Alexander, Manulowicz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Evstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Glanton, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, LaRicchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkel, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Washburn, Watson, Welch, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yurda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernau, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B., Moore C., Morris M., Nelson, Wen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaux, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M., Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
Yes.
Bonner,
Yes.
Buckner,
Yes.
Burchett,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
Dukes,
Yes.
Gamble,
Yes.
Gilliard,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Gullett, Jones, J.B., Kirby, Lott,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Metz, Momtahan,
Yes.
Park, Pruitt, Rogers, Singleton,
Yes. Yes.
Stovall,
Yes.
Williams R.,
Yes.
Anulowitz, Blackman, Burns, Clark D., Clark J., Collins, Cooper. Dryer. Gilligan. Hill. Hitchens. Hughley. Jones, J.B. Jones, V. Kelly. Kirby. Lopez Romero. Paris. Pruitt.
Yes.
Saints. Thomas, A.M.
Members will look at the board and make sure it's correct. Clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 371. The ayes are 154, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 342.
Senate Bill 342 by Senator Jones, the 25th, Mullis, the 53rd, Gooch, the 51st, Kennedy, the 18th, and Miller, the 49th, be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 3 and Article 1 of Chapter 4, Title 25, the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to minimum requirements for local fire departments and general provisions relative to firefighter standards. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
The chair recognizes Chairman Rhodes to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have before you this morning Senate Bill 342. This legislation is a result of the outcries we heard of our volunteer firefighters from across the state. We're losing them left and right. These ladies and gentlemen that go out and volunteer their time in efforts to help protect us and our homes are really at risk. Sometime back a few years ago, through some legislation, I think it was inadvertently, they got lumped in with the full-time firefighters. We, as an example, just if this were to continue and they were to shut down our volunteer fire departments in my home county, it would cost us $6 to $8 million to equip our volunteer firefighters up to standards and training standards. All this legislation does is take them back to their volunteer firefighter status, and they have to obtain those minimum standards of volunteer firefighters. Mr. Speaker, are there any questions? I'll be glad to answer them.
I do not think you have any questions.
I yield the well and ask for your favorable vote.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 342 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine and call the roll.
Alexander, Anulowicz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Abstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Glanton, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, LaRicchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkel, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Washburn, Watson, Welch, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yerda, Allen, Bernau, Bazemore, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B., Moore C., Morris M., Nelson, Wen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaux, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M., Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
Yes.
Bonner,
Yes.
Buckner,
Yes.
Burchett,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
Dukes,
Yes.
Gamble,
Yes.
Gilliard,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Green, Gullett, Jones J.B., Kirby, Lott, Mathis,
Yes. Yes.
Metz, Momtahan,
Yes.
Park, Pruitt,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Singleton,
Yes.
Stovall,
Yes.
Williams R.,
Yes.
Clark D., Gardner, Henson, Hill, Holmes. Jones, J.B. Kelly. Kirby. Lopez Romero. Moore, B. Perkel. Sharper. Smith, M. Taylor. Thomas, A.M. Wilkerson. Williams, N.
Okay, members will look at the board and make sure that it is correct. Members will look at the board. Clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 342, the ayes are 158. The nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Due to some unusual circumstances, Representative Bentley was not able to be here for morning orders this morning. I'm recognizing her at this time for a morning order. Representative Patty Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I come to you this morning with a heavy heart. Yesterday, as I was turning onto Capitol Avenue to come to the Capitol, I got a call that my husband had taken ill and was taken to the hospital in Macon. So I turned around to go back to the hospital, so I wasn't able to be here with you all on yesterday. And then this morning, as I was up getting dressed to come back to the Capitol, we got a call that my father-in-law had passed away. Calvin J. Bentley Sr., owner of Bentley & Sons Funeral Home of Macon, Jeffersonville, and Roberta, been in funeral business for over 50 years, went home to be with the Lord today. And I ask that you all keep the Bentley family in prayer, as it's been a really rough time for all of us, especially for me. But with your love and support and your prayers, I've been able to make it through. And I just thank you so very much. May God bless you all. I'm sorry. May we have a moment of silence, please, in honor of Mr. Calvin J. Bentley Sr. Thank you. Amen. God bless you all.
Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 288.
Senate Bill 288 by Senator Anderson of the 43rd, Jones of the 22nd, Jordan of the 6th, Parent of the 42nd, Jones of the 10th, and others, be titled an act to amend Code Section 35-337 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to review of individual criminal history record information, definitions, privacy considerations. This bill I refer to the committee, a special committee on criminal justice system. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Houston Gaines to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 288 would give Georgians a second chance. This legislation is an important step forward for criminal justice reform in our state. I'm extremely proud to have been a part of this legislation, and it's a bill we can all agree on that will help millions of Georgians. This legislation allows for individuals to have their records restricted for employment purposes for certain misdemeanor offenses after not reoffending for a period of 4 years. Law enforcement and the courts will continue to have access to these records. Our large employers like Home Depot and Coca-Cola have expressed their support. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, all ends of the political spectrum, from Freedom Works and Faith and Freedom Coalition and Americans for Prosperity to the Southern Center for Human Rights, nonprofit groups like the United Way. This is something we can all get behind. 41 states provide their citizens the opportunity to have a second chance by allowing individuals to restrict certain offenses. Just in the last year, we've seen Texas, Oklahoma, North Carolina, and many other states expand record restriction eligibility. Today, we can join these 41 other states. By passing this bill, we will not only help returning citizens gain employment and fill Georgia jobs, but we can help reduce recidivism rates across the state. In a time when unemployment is near a record high, we should help Georgians across our state and pass this legislation. Hope you'll join me in this effort and vote yes on Senate Bill 288. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't think you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agree or to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 288 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines and call the roll.
Alexander, Anulowicz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Evstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Glanton, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, Laricchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkel, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Washburn, Watson, Welch, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yerda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernau, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B, Moore C, Morris M, Nelson, Wen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaud, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M, Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
Yes.
Bonner,
Yes.
Buckner, Burchett,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
Dukes,
Yes.
Gamble, Gilliard,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Gullett, Jones J.B., Kirby, Lott,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Metz, Momtahan,
Yes.
Park, Pruitt,
Yes.
Rogers, Singleton,
Yes.
Stovall,
Yes.
Williams R, Bazemore, Bentley, Buckner, Burns,
Yes.
Cannon, Clark J, Dreyer, Gamble, Hill, Jones J.B., Jones V, Kendrick, Kirby, Lopez Romero, Newton, Paris, Petrie, Scoggins, Smith M, Stevens R, Thomas E, Watson.
Members will look at the board and be sure it's correct. Representative, where is she? Okay. All right, members, look at the board. The clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 288. The ayes are 159, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 301.
Senate Bill 301 by Senator Tillery of the 19th, Hill of the 4th, Robertson of the 29th, Mullis of the 53rd, Miller of the 49th, be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 6 of Title 42 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding detainers. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
I'm going to stick one in. Chair recognizes Chairman Bill Werkheiser to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill was brought by our local sheriff to Senator Blake Tillery, the late Senator Jack Hill, and myself. Tattnall has a population of 25,000. 5,000 of those are inmates, state inmates. This was suggested to save both state and local governments money, manpower, and more importantly, social cost on transporting state inmates back and forth to local jails from state prisons while being adjudicated on new charges while being incarcerated. I mentioned social cost. State inmates who are usually more hardened are being transported back and forth for charges they commit while being incarcerated to county jails where they are put in jails that are not suitable to housing these type of offenders, and this is where gang tactics are shared and they're just not equipped to do this. The terrible incident in Baldwin County is an example of inmates overtaking guards, which should have been a routine transport. These inmates will remain in the custody of the institution until all charges have been adjudicated, and this will only happen if it's requested by the local sheriff and the warden and the local, the sheriff, local warden, and the commissioner agree to it. And that's the bill, and I'll stand for any questions. If not, I'll yield the well.
I do not think you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ask for your favorable consideration for Senate Bill 301.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 301 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines.
Alexander, Anulowicz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Efstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Glanton, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, Laricchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkle, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Washburn, Watson, Welch, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yerda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernau, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B., Moore C., Morris M., Nelson, Wen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaud, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Stevens, Stevens M., Stevenson, Smith M., Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague, Bonner,
Yes.
Buckner,
Yes.
Burchett, Caldwell,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
Yes.
Dickerson, Dukes,
Yes. Yes.
Gamble, Gilliard, Gordon,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Gullett,
Yes.
Jones J.B.,
Yes.
Kirby,
Yes.
Lott,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Metz,
Yes.
Momtahan,
Yes.
Park, Pruitt,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Singleton,
Yes.
Stovall, Williams R., Williams R., Barr, Beasley Teague, Burns, Cannon, Clark H., Dollar, Dreyer, Gamble, Gilliard,
Yes.
Harrell, Hatchett, Henson, Holmes, Jones V., Lopez Romero, Lumsden, Petrie, Rogers, Scoggins, Tarvin, Williams A., Wilson.
Members will look at the board, make sure it is correct. Clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 301, the ayes are 157, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 394. This was a bill that was postponed from a prior legislative day until today. It is called at this time Senate Bill 394.
Senate Bill 394 by Senator Albers, the 56th, Robertson, the 29th, Harper, the 7th, Brass, the 28th, Martin, the 9th. To to be entitled, an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 16, Article 1 of Chapter 15, and Title 45 and Article 7 of Chapter 4, Title 49 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to kidnapping, false imprisonment, and related offenses. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Judiciary, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Reeves to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 394, y'all, this is a pretty simple bill. As I think all of us are aware, we have several different state agencies in our state, and many of those state agencies have units that conduct investigations, Department of Revenue, Department of Insurance, and the Attorney General's office is also one of our agencies that has the ability to conduct state investigations. And so the way that our laws are set up is that these investigators, and some of them are post-certified, but they are only allowed to exercise all of the powers of a post-certified peace officer if the General Assembly specifically allows them to do that in code. And so the Attorney General's office currently has, of the many things they investigate, by way of example, there's something in Georgia called the Fair Business Practice Act, which is our consumer fraud protection laws. The Attorney General's office has investigators that investigate consumer fraud issues, and they have investigators right now because our code has specifically allowed it in Title 10 that their investigators have full peace officer powers. The Attorney General's office over the last several years, and all of you who have been in the room for a while have been a part of this, has really expanded its ability to investigate and prosecute Medicaid fraud and human trafficking. So currently, the Attorney General's office has one investigator in the Human Trafficking Division, and they have 14 investigators in the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. But those investigators do not enjoy the full powers of a peace officer because we have not allowed them so in law. And so this bill simply allows in those specific areas, Medicaid fraud, mostly dealing with the exploitation of elders, and then human trafficking, it allows them those full powers. And it's important because those cases are complex and there's oftentimes urgency, especially in human trafficking cases where the need to make an arrest is urgent. It needs to happen on the spot. And these very complex Medicaid fraud cases oftentimes stretch across several jurisdictions. So instead of having to partner with other local jurisdictions, this will allow the Attorney General to have the flexibility to really have the efficiency to handle these cases from beginning to end. Mr. Speaker, there is the bill supported by the GBI, Police Chiefs, Sheriff Association. This should be a simple matter. I will yield for questions.
You do have a question or two. Do you yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman Fleming to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, isn't it true that I fully support this bill because, as I understand it, we have been doing a good job of trying in this state to crack down on sex trafficking, especially of children. And as our Attorney General has expanded his efforts to eliminate that as best we can from the state, this is a vital component of that need. Is that not true?
That is true. And, I understand there's a minority report on the case, so I think that there is going to be opposition to this. But I will say this is about the exploitation of elders, and it's about human trafficking. And I believe that those are two issues that are about as bipartisan as it gets. And supporting this bill is simply allowing the office that is investigating those issues, that knows the most about those issues, that begin those investigations, to actually be able to follow through and finish them up and be completely over them from start to beginning. So, Mr. Speaker, since there is a minority report, I will yield the well.
Okay. Gentleman has yielded the well. And there is a minority report. And under the rules of the House, 20 minutes are allocated for the presentation of the report. The chair recognizes Representative McLaurin for purposes of the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask the House today, when making a decision on this bill, to think about the way that framing the issue is working in this discussion. You just heard the gentleman say that this bill is about sex trafficking, or it's about Medicare fraud. I disagree. I think this bill is about process. I think this bill is about separation of powers. And I'll try to explain briefly. Anybody here a fan of Law & Order? You know the beginning of the episode when it says the criminal justice system is divided into two parts: the prosecutors that charge cases and police that investigate them. Two parts. Now, public defenders take a beef with that intro, but that's for another time. But there's a reason why there's two parts, as articulated by the makers of Law & Order. Because the power to prosecute a crime is distinct, even within the executive branch, from the power to investigate or enforce the laws on the ground. This bill would give the Attorney General's office the ability to collapse that distinction, to hire its own post-certified officers to investigate the crimes that it itself is prosecuting as a matter of expediency, as a matter of convenience. I think sex trafficking is horrible. I've worked at a federal court on Medicare fraud issues. I do not take for granted the seriousness of those issues. But it's really, really easy to stand up and say, we should collapse separation of powers because these issues are really bad. You wouldn't agree, as the Georgia legislature, to collapse the legislative and executive functions of Georgia government just because the issue that we think we could address more efficiently is a bad issue or it's a really important issue. You wouldn't do that because process is important. So I'm asking you to look within the executive branch at this request from the Attorney General to collapse the functions of prosecutors and police. I really don't have a whole lot more to say than that. It's about convenience. And I have not personally served as a post-certified officer, and I've never been a prosecutor, so I can't personally give you any stories as to why it's important for those functions to be distinct. But I ask you, if we're going to go down this road where for matters of administrative, executive convenience at the level of the Attorney General, there are people in here who are concerned about liberty. And I just ask you to keep that concern at the forefront of your mind as you evaluate this bill. I yield the rest of my time. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded his time. Under the rules of the House, the chairman has the 20-minute final argument. Chair recognizes Chairman F. Strachan for the chairman's time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield the balance of the chairman's time to Representative Reeves.
Gentleman has that right, and the chair recognizes Representative Reeves for the balance of the chairman's time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's an interesting argument that was just made about that we should separate the prosecutor's ability to investigate and then prosecute. Probably, maybe somebody could get Paul Howard over here to hear that comment because, well, you know, consistency is important, right? Consistency is important. So somebody please call Paul Howard and ask him to come over here and listen to this debate. There's never been, to my knowledge, I've been here 6 years, nobody's ever raised an issue about the various and sundry state agencies such as Department of Revenue, Department of Insurance, and currently the Attorney General's office that already has the ability for their investigators to exercise full peace officer powers. I've never in my 6 years heard anybody even talk about how we need to repeal that, how that's a problem and that's an issue. And so if we're going to frame the issue, as was said in the minority report, then let's frame the issue that this has never been an issue until right now. And again, this is creating an efficiency that's going to help us better handle the exploitation of elders in human trafficking criminal cases. These are complex cases, and the Attorney General's office has very qualified individuals as the investigators that are highly competent, and I ask that this body please support this measure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does Representative Al Williams rise? State your inquiry.
Parliamentary. Is it not true, Mr. Speaker, that I was looking forward to asking the gentleman what he was going to tell us out that big book that he brought with him to the podium, which he never used?
Maybe he's never read it.
I think you're right, but, oh yeah, I understand. Well, you didn't open it. I don't want it because that thing seems awful to me. I have enough trouble without that. Take it back. I don't get paid. But is it not further true that in testimony before our subcommittee appropriations, the Attorney General has said, and this is just by way of an edification, that elder abuse, while egregious, the biggest Medicaid fraud is from providers. But I do like the bill. But the providers are who take all of our money out of Medicaid. That's the big loser.
If the gentleman so states, Chair recognizes the chairman of the committee, Chairman F. Strachan, to your for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it not true that Georgia has taken incredible steps over the past few years to fight the evil human trafficking enterprises that we have found, and that this measure, consistent with investigators working in prosecutors' offices who are post-certified, this gives the Attorney General the tools to fight crimes that many times can span jurisdictions, can span judicial circuits, and state's chief law enforcement officer needs these tools. Is that not true?
If the gentleman so states, I know that he is an expert in this area. What purpose does Representative Holly rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
It's not true that for the amazing bills that this legislature has passed in order to stop human trafficking, that we've been able to do so because our government has been able to successfully work with many of the local small municipalities who already have active investigators who are working these cases to make sure that we can limit the amount of sex trafficking cases in the state.
If the gentleman so states, I know he believes that to be true. What purpose does Chairman Setzler rise? We got you a microphone coming.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
If members of this body are honest with themselves, isn't it true that we believe that the Attorney General's office has this power? I mean, I didn't know, Mr. Speaker, that they couldn't conduct these kinds of investigations. The idea that they can't, I mean, I would have never known as a member of the public, and candidly as a member of this legislature, that the Attorney General's office did not have this power. This seems to do something very simple that I think most members in this chamber would presume they already have the power to do, Mr. Speaker. Why are we making this complicated when it's directly focused on sex trafficking investigations for the kind of powers that common sense would tell us they should have already had, and this is just trying to fix that simple oversight in law. Isn't that true, Mr. Speaker?
Because I think sometimes we're predisposed to make that which is not complicated, complicated. What purpose does Representative Carpenter rise?
Parliamentary
State your inquiry.
Is this not true? Is it not true that this bill is talking about the Attorney General, that as soon as he found out the terrible incidents that happened in Brunswick, moved swiftly to make sure justice would be served?
He did do that. Okay, we're ready to vote. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines and call the roll.
Alexander, Anulowicz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Efstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, Laricchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkle, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarbin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Washburn, Watson, Welch, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yurda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernal, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B., Morris C., Morris M., Nelson, Huen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaux, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M., Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
Yes.
Bonner,
Yes.
Buckner,
No.
Burchett, Caldwell,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
Yes.
Dickerson,
No.
Dukes,
No.
Gamble, Gilliard.
No.
Gordon.
No.
Green.
Yes.
Gullett.
Yes.
Jones, J.B.
Yes.
Kirby.
Yes.
Lott.
Yes.
Mathis.
Yes.
Metz.
No.
Momtahan.
Yes.
Park.
No.
Pruitt. Rogers.
Yes.
Singleton. Stovall.
Yes.
Williams, R. Anulowitz. Drenner. Donahue. Gamble.
Yes.
Jackson, M. McCall. Mitchell. Scott. Thomas, E.
Members will look at the board. Make sure it is correct. Clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 394. The ayes are 102, the nays are 64. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 429.
Senate Bill 429 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd, Stone of the 23rd, Robertson of the 29th, Cowser of the 46th. Be titled an act to amend the official code of Georgia annotated so as to revise, modernize, correct errors or omissions in and react to statutory portion of the said code. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Code Revision. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Timothy Barr to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I brought my water today as this is a 23-page bill, and I'd like to go over it line by line with you. Brevity. This is our annual cleanup bill. We add capitalizations where they were omitted, commas and periods, and that is the 23 pages of this bill is purely revising the code in that way. And in the interest of lunch, I will yield the well, Mr. Speaker. Ask for your favorable consideration.
I do not think you have any questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines.
Alexander, Anulowitz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Evstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, LaRicchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkel, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Washburn, Watson, Welch, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yerda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernau, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B., Moore C., Morris M., Nelson, Wen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaud, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M., Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
Yes.
Bonner,
Yes.
Buckner,
Yes.
Burchett, Caldwell,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
Dukes,
Yes.
Gamble,
Yes.
Gilliard,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Gullett,
Yes.
Jones J.B.,
Yes.
Kirby,
Yes.
Lott,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Metz,
Yes.
Momtahan,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Pruitt,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Singleton,
Yes.
Stovall,
Yes.
Williams R., Cannon, Carter, Dreyer, Gaines, Hughley, Hutchinson, Jackson M., Jones V., Meeks, Newton, Ridley. Scoggins. Trammell. Williams, A. Yurda.
Members will check the board and make sure it's accurate. Clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 429. The ayes are 166, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 344.
Senate Bill 344 by Senator Mullis, the 53rd, Miller, the 49th, Dugan, the 30th, Gooch, the 51st, Kennedy, the 18th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 24-1360, the official code of Georgia annotated, relating to order requiring prisoners' delivery to serve as a witness or criminal defendant generally. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Non-Civil Act Committee, recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman F. Stration to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I begin today presenting Senate Bill 344 by telling you a little bit about my other job. So I'm a practicing attorney when we're not in session. I go to the courthouse pretty much every day. I'm there all the time and am familiar with the criminal process and procedure on both sides of it. Being a former prosecutor myself and being in private practice, I've seen how it works. My wife served as a citizen advisor on an accountability court, have just seen the ins and outs of it. And we had a really innovative judge a few years ago who started doing something new in Gwinnett County, where I primarily practice. So Judge Randy Rich, the spouse of one of our members of this body, is an outstanding judge and was a tremendous innovator, certainly from my perspective. What he did was he worked through the technology aspects to ensure that defendants who needed time in court and when there was relatively routine matters to take care of, that there could be a video connection between the courtroom, all interested parties, and the defendant. And what that did is it enabled for expeditious justice. It didn't require that cases be held over or postponed because transportation didn't happen, which actually is a frequent issue if an inmate isn't transported. It really allowed for tremendous efficiency in the process, but also was a huge cost savings to the county and was done so with true protections for all rights and all parties involved. And that really opened my eyes to the procedure and the opportunities that really come from that. Senate Bill 344, that's a long-winded way of me telling you. Senate Bill 344 is authorizing in code for this really to be done throughout the state, because primarily the delays that happen are because of inmate transport to and from prisons, where there can be hours and hours of drive time in between. And we're talking about very expensive, costly transportation because of the guards necessary for the transit. And if transportation isn't made and all the attorneys are present in one place and a hearing can't happen, that's a huge expense to the state and local government because of that. So what we have here is a bill that would allow for non-trial proceedings, certain specific proceedings, to occur by video conference, which we've all become more accustomed to in this current time, but would allow for defendants or people who are post-conviction. So this is either pre-trial or post-conviction proceedings to be handled in this manner. Now, there are a few exceptions, and that would be just what's listed here includes arraignments and other just very routine matters. But your right to be present in court for your trial is not changed by this bill. The legislation is requested by the Georgia Department of Corrections and has been supported by them. It was introduced by Senator Mullis. In committee, we heard about the importance of this cost savings and how this would allow for the parties involved to also have confidential communication with their attorneys. So a defendant is going to have a secured means by which to have confidential communication with his or her attorney. And I'll just tell you, if you've ever been through the process of an attorney, what we have to do otherwise many times is a criminal defense attorney will actually have to go to the prison, go through all the protocols to enter a prison, which are extensive, and then be very limited in any ability to potentially interact or have extensive conversation because of the limitation of time once inside the prison to meet with the attorney's client. So these protocols, I believe, will really help to ensure a greater expeditious delivery of justice in our state and will serve all parties involved, preserve the ability, of course, to be in court for your trial. That's unchanged. And a side effect of this will also be a huge cost savings to the state, a very important thing. Now, if a defendant feels that he or she should be in court, his attorney has the ability to make that known to the judge. And the judge may grant that and order that the party appear. There's been great discussion of, and I think the minority report references, that that's not a shall. You should have an absolute right to be in court. And I'll just tell you this, with all of the protections that we have in our Constitution, our code for criminal defendants, with the oversight of the judiciary and the appellate process, I am confident reading this legislation that all protections due to defendants under our Constitution are preserved with this bill. I don't have any concerns that people are going to be prevented from getting what they want in the process. And we heard in committee from a Superior Court judge who stated, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but if a request is made by a party to be present, more than likely that's going to happen. A judge is going to agree to it. But when we're talking about post-conviction matters that can be handled in an expeditious manner, it continues to be my belief that Senate Bill 344 serves inmates, serves defendants, serves those accused of a crime far greater than any possible concern that a judge might refuse a request to appear in person. I believe that this is good legislation. I'll be happy to yield for questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Silcox to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that this will also provide for people to still have access to these conferences, the same they would in a courtroom? That is, these will not be conducted in private, so people will still have access to hear these hearings if they so desire.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. And just to give a summary here, all parties and those involved would still be in the courtroom traditionally with this. The hearing is open, the courtroom is open, so those who appear in court have the ability to see just like they would any other open courtroom proceeding. And in some circumstances, I'm aware of the hearings being live streamed online as well. So public access is preserved. That's in no way changed from existing requirements in the law.
And don't you think also, Mr. Chairman, that this will result in substantial savings to the state?
Without a doubt, substantial savings. The testimony that we heard in committee is it's thousands of dollars per inmate to appear at these hearings in court. And if you think about a habeas corpus proceeding, a post-hearing, post-conviction hearing, where a person who has been convicted is being transported to the court, the attorney is potentially having to be transported to the prison before the meeting. We're talking about great cost savings and increase in efficiency in allowing the person to get judicial consideration of his or her petition, and for the defense attorney to speak to, the post-conviction attorney to speak to his or her client in an expeditious manner with all the protections of confidentiality and privilege preserved.
I thank you for bringing the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Burchett for a question to your right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that in a time as we are in now with this pandemic, that this would create an ability for these hearings to take place remotely so that there is less likely the chance for any type of transmission and we can continue to move business along in times such as these? Isn't that true?
That's absolutely true, and thank you. That's a great point that I hadn't raised, but I know that there's been great concern by all of us to reduce transmission. Certainly the Department of Corrections has expressed concern and pushed to ensure that that's minimized, and by allowing for these video hearings, that will further that regard.
I do not do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask the House to favorably consider this measure, and I'll yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. We do have a minority report. We have a minority report on Senate Bill 344. Chair recognizes the minority leader of the House, Leader Trammell, for the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know it's lunchtime, but I want to start out by reading from the text of the United States Constitution, Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury to the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Ladies and gentlemen, it may be right before lunchtime, but the Sixth Amendment right to counsel is literally on trial on the floor of the Georgia House. It's on trial. And if you vote yes to this bill, you are eviscerating the fundamental constitutional right to counsel provided in the Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution. Now, let me tell you about what this bill does by its own terms. This is a bill about convenience, administrative ease. But you know something? The founders, when they wrote the Constitution, recognized there's some things that aren't supposed to be easy. And your constitutional rights, they're not supposed to be given up or taken away easily. You're not supposed to be able to take someone's liberty away easily. And when we talk about going to a process where a defendant on trial for his liberty is able to appear by video and has no choice in the matter, does not have a fundamental right to say, I want to appear in front of the judge in this proceeding, we have compromised that fundamental right to counsel. Now, it was said that they maintained the right to appear for a jury trial. But how many of you have ever been to a proceeding where there's a criminal calendar in court, a state court or superior court? There are literally dozens upon dozens, sometimes hundreds of cases, people there in court, waiting for their day in court. If we do this, you know what will happen? We're just speeding up the processing of people, just like that. And when a defendant says, I want to appear in court, are they guaranteed that right? No, not under this bill. Only if the judge says okay. The judge's discretion. And you know what? As a lawyer, a lot of times convenience trumps fairness. And if it's not a right, and they don't have the ability to invoke it as a right, they'll lose it. Now, I want to talk about this. It was made out like it was just post-conviction proceedings and things that don't involve the implication of surrender of liberty. But I would call your attention to line 27 in the bill. entry of pleas in criminal cases. That means you're pleading guilty. That means the awful, awesome power of the government is coming down to bear upon you. And you are surrendering your liberty from a video conference. Now, if a defendant voluntarily wanted to waive a right to appear in person, this bill might be totally different. But that's not what this body is being asked to do. We're being asked to take that right away from a prisoner in custody of the state or a prisoner in custody of the county correctional facility. Look where we are right now. We're in 3 places. We're not all on the floor of the chamber. We're on the floor, we're in the gallery, and we're in 341. Would anybody maintain that this is exactly the same as we regularly do business? No, it's not. It's harder. Even though everyone is free to come down to the chamber, we have the rights to move about. But you know something? When you're confined in a correctional facility, it's not like coming from 341. It's not like coming down from the gallery to participate in this proceeding. You're there, there are guards all around, you're not right next to your lawyer. You think that's the right to counsel? Oh, wait a second, I want a time out, Your Honor. I need 5 minutes with my client. We'll go in the room and look at a video monitor, and you can have you can have the time you need to talk to your client. You don't think that there are potential other implications about attorney-client privilege that will come up in certain contexts with that? Of course there will be. I want to end this. I'm gonna end this and yield my time to Representative Bodie, because I think I've made my point, but I just want to tell you one story. You know, I've stood in those proceedings next to defendants when they're entering pleas, when they're going through this process. And I got to tell you that being able to be right there, while it may not be part of the record proceeding, there are a lot of times where a defendant needs to lean over to his or her lawyer and ask a question, just if it's about what's going on, what's happening. What's going on here? What's about to happen? So it's not like I'm giving them some brilliant legal advice at the moment, but they've got that right. They have an advocate that understands the process and is there to explain it, is there to stand up for them when something's not going right. And it's not the same if you put somebody on a video and you're just sitting there and they're left to guess. And you know what it would take? It would take tremendous courage to summon the strength from a remote location to say, I need a minute to speak with my lawyer. Whereas if they're right next to me, they can just tap me on the shoulder, say, what's going on? It's not the same. We know it's not the same. Here's my story, and then I'm going to yield the balance of my time to the whip, Representative Bodie. You know, you see a lot of things in court. And one day I was taking a plea with a guy, and he thought that he was going to get probation. It was the recommendation of both the prosecution and the defense, and that was the way he thought it was going to go down. He thought he was going to walk out of that courtroom. But it was one of the rare instances where the judge disagreed with the recommendation of the prosecutor in the joint plea agreement. Thought he deserved some time because of the nature of the offense. Caught us unsuspecting and caught us unaware. So he got sentenced to 2 years to serve. And you know what he did? He pulled his wedding ring off and he handed it to me. And he said, give it to my wife so she can take care of it. You can't do that on video. Mr. Speaker, I yield the balance of the time for the minority report to the whip, Representative Bodie.
Gentleman has that right. The chair recognizes Representative Bodie for the remaining 10 minutes and 30 seconds of the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Normally, when I come to the well, I will have a sheet, piece of paper, my speech written out. But this is one of those occasions where I just don't need that. Because I live it every day, just like our leader of the Georgia House Democratic Caucus every day. We debated this issue in committee. We just asked, allow a defendant to opt out. Allow the defendant to be able to go before the judge if they choose to. So some of us may be sitting here because we may not have been involved or had a loved one involved with the judicial system. But sometimes in this General Assembly, we have to put ourselves in the seat of the people that come before institutions of this state that we have nothing to deal with in our daily lives. Because we do represent the state of Georgia. And we do have people that may have mental issues, drinking issues, substance abuse issues, that may have to avail themselves to the judicial system. And like the leader stated before, constitutional rights should always be adhered to. And this General Assembly should do everything that we possibly can to make sure the Georgia Constitution and the U.S. Constitution are always front of mind before this noble body. I won't keep much of your time, but the leader had a story because he's a trial lawyer like me, and I have a story. I had a client, I would say it in a jurisdiction that could be a little tough when it comes to repeat offenders. But this is a nonviolent offense, a theft offense. The problem is my client had a string of those offenses. And I spoke with my client. I want to know what's going on here. What is the root of the problem? Mr. Bodie, I'm an alcoholic. Mr. Bodie, I do drugs. Mr. Bodie, I have stolen from my mother, my family, and I've disgraced my family. But it's time, Mr. Bodie, I need help. I need you to get me into a program for my substance abuse problems. I need to be able to be a man to my child. I need to be able to be a man to my family. And so I found him substance abuse program that would accept him. And so when I went to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor said, Mr. Bodie, the negotiated plea, the best I can do is 10 years in prison. I was like, well, Mr. Prosecutor, I just can't accept 10 years in prison for my client. I just can't do that. My client has a drug problem, and he's going to get into a rehab program. He's going to change his life. Well, Mr. Bodie, you tell it to the judge. And I said, okay, we'll put it up non-negotiated. What non-negotiated means is that we don't have an agreement, and I'm going to put up my side, argue my case for my client, and the state is going to do the same. And the DA and the judge is going to make the decision in the end. And so I told my client, I was like, it may not look good for us because you do have a record, and you have a string of theft cases. And he's told me, Mr. Bodie, just let the judge see my face. I just want the judge to see my face. And so we went before the judge, and the judge saw my client's face and told his story of his life, of his challenges. The judge gave him a better deal than I could ever ask for. We're going to put you on probation today, but you're gonna go straight into that substance abuse program. We're gonna let you go, we're gonna let you leave here today. And we're gonna allow you to wait on a bed, but be with your family. And as soon as you're done, we're gonna terminate that probation. Once you complete that program, you don't have to pay any fines or fees. And we're gonna give you first offender treatment. My client completed it. He's married today. He has a family. He just had a child. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the will.
Okay, moving on now to the chairman's time. Chairman F. Strachan is recognized for the chairman's time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, it's been a busy week for me. I had no idea that this would be this bill would end up being the biggest fight here on the floor as it's become. A few things have been said from this well which need to be corrected, which just simply are not consistent with the practice and the truth as I've observed it. I appreciated the Minority Whip's comments just a moment ago. I recall in committee that this member actually specifically talked about a great experience with resolving a matter through a video connection in a Cobb County courtroom, spoke specifically to the judge whom he had been before. This legislation does nothing to stop or prevent a criminal defendant from being present in the courtroom when his or her liberty is at stake. Trials are unchanged by this bill. A trial cannot take place because of this bill over video. It can't be done. We're only talking about, as I said earlier, and I'm consistently saying now, pre-trial and post-trial proceedings in a very limited nature. So let's go through them. All right, you can see the listed events here. All right, hearings on appearance, initial appearance hearings, probable cause hearings, pretrial motion hearings, all pretrial. And line 27, entry of pleas in a criminal case. Now, I practice law, so I know what this looks like, but not everybody in here has seen these procedures, seen how this goes. What happens when there's an entry of a plea in a criminal case? That's where an attorney has met with his or her client, has discussed, and we're talking about in custody cases here, has met with his or her client in custody, has discussed the implications of voluntarily and freely going before court and admitting guilt in a case, and understands the implications, because that attorney is duty bound to have made sure that his or her client knows these things. Now, if the client is leaning over in court right now and saying, "What's happening?" I submit to you, then there's been a real failure in the communication and contact between the attorney and his client prior to that date. But if that happens anyway, if that still occurs, there is a means by which for there to be a direct and secure communication channel between the attorney and the defendant. And by the way, it was said in committee that if the attorney wants to be with his or her client at the remote location and have the video connection that way, that's fine too. Nothing in this bill would prevent that. And some lawyers I've seen prefer to do that. They want to, for the guilty plea, to go be next to their client and speak to the judge through the video feed. That's fine. There is nothing in this bill which is inconsistent with constitutional protections ensuring that you get due process under the law. I mean, by its very nature, the Constitution would trump anything that we're doing here. And the fact that this is being practiced, that we've seen in state courts, only and all the more so, should encourage you and give you confidence in our ability to pass this for protections to remain in place. Now, I'll point you to some other language here, just for anybody who's really questioning, how is this going to work? And it's lines 78 to 80. All right, except for these pretrial and post-sentencing matters, nothing in this code section should be construed as providing for the use of testimony pursuant to paragraph 1 of this subsection in criminal proceedings. That's making it explicit. It cannot be used at trial. You have to be in the courtroom for any trial. That's unchanged. This is not about folks who are now going to have to plead for their liberty over a video connection. That's just not in this bill, in the trial proceeding. We talked about other court matters that are also included in here, so it's not just limited to the criminal context, but we're looking at great efficiencies in the court system, which I'd mentioned are not all that indifferent from what we've already passed this week, which is allowing the General Assembly to meet and hold committee meetings and deliberate and discuss issues through video. We've already passed that. What could be of greater importance than deliberation on the laws of our state that we'll all have to live under? And if it's good enough for a unanimous vote or complete support on an issue like that, we're talking about the same type of framework for what I'd characterize as more regular matters that are required to be handled by courts, which require parties to appear, and currently a very expensive and long process for inmates to be transported to and from a courtroom, sometimes on the other side of Georgia. You know, a common statement often given is justice delayed is justice denied. When I read this bill, what I see is utilizing technology to deliver justice to the people of this state. I wouldn't be up here, I wouldn't be talking to you about this measure if I thought there was any chance that this would cause some sort of railroading of people or a denial of due process or a denial of civil rights. I view this as a great opportunity for those who are in custody in our state to get their cases resolved, because I can't imagine anything worse than sitting in a jail cell or sitting in prison waiting to resolve your matter, waiting to be heard, but you can't because transportation didn't occur, because the Chief Justice issued a COVID state of emergency that's been extended for 30 more days, because other things have occurred which will prevent you from being in court, because your attorney can't find the time or hasn't been able to yet to drive across Georgia to your prison to meet with you. The opportunities here to get before a judge, to address issues, to give that person who's in custody a chance to speak to the man or woman in power who can address, who can fix the problems, I think is tremendous. And I think if we fail to act on Senate Bill 344 today, if we leave this measure for another session or vote it down, that will do more harm than good to the people of our state. I ask you to support Senate Bill 344.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Beth Moore to your right up in the gallery for a question.
Thank you for the spirited debate on this. Does the gentleman yield for
yes,
one
ma'am.
motion? Isn't it true that if we do not pass this particular version of this bill today, that would not preclude court systems from voluntarily putting in place these types of virtual proceedings, just like we do in Gwinnett County, as you mentioned in your first statements?
I disagree with you in this sense. The state of Georgia will still likely be compelled or required to transport inmates to and from court proceedings without explicit statutory authorization.
Do you yield for a follow-up question?
Sure.
So how does the court, isn't it true that we do have a judge in Gwinnett County, as you said, that has implemented these virtual proceedings on a voluntary basis, both in terms of it's voluntary for the court and voluntary for the defendant? Isn't it true that there are other courts that if they had the financial means and the technological ability, including a good internet connection, that they could implement this type of virtual proceeding if they wanted to?
So I don't practice extensively in this area, so I can't speak to specifically what's going on, but my understanding is what we see at the Gwinnett Courthouse is primarily between the Gwinnett Courthouse and the Gwinnett Jail, or in a habeas proceeding between a prison where there's a phone contact for the attorney. Doesn't include the protections that are in place in this bill to ensure the video conferencing that would be expected at the conclusion of this bill, and thereby, it's my understanding, thereby the state and the Department of Corrections would be compelled to transport an inmate to and from court, costing thousands of dollars.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative McLaurin to your left for a question.
I'm done here. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that in committee, a bipartisan group of legislators attempted to amend the bill to change the word may to shall, meaning the judge using in-person proceedings upon objection of the defendant, but that the committee rejected that amendment?
So I can't remember the amendment exactly, but this was a real focus of the debate in committee.
Does the gentleman further yield for one
Yes,
more
sir.
question?
Mm-hmm.
Is it not true that the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, guarantees not only the assistance of counsel, but also the effective assistance of counsel at a series of stages, so-called critical stages, which include proceedings like an arraignment, pretrial hearing, pretrial motions that would be covered by the provisions in the bill?
So what I'll say is there is, throughout constitutional arguments that have been made about the extent of the right to counsel, there have been interpretations as to at which phase or certain phases whether or not the right to counsel exists. But I don't think there's any contesting that in the phases that are before us in the criminal context, there is a right to counsel, absolutely. What I would just say to you is, many times in the court system and in the judiciary, I've observed inefficiencies which drive me crazy. What are some of those inefficiencies? It's the failure or inability of an attorney to make contact with his or her client. Maybe there's a large caseload. Maybe there's some obstruction to being able to get into the courthouse. Get into the jail or where that person's being held to meet with them. Maybe it's you can only come during these certain hours and the lawyer has court during those hours and it becomes very difficult. Other major obstacles, a judge's calendar, judges who have very long calendars and an inability to get all of the cases before the judge for decisions and dispositions and justice to be done in the cases. And a third major thing that I've seen that's caused issue, and that is when judges show up, attorneys show up, the attorneys are being paid by the state potentially through indigent defense. The judge, of course, is being paid by the state. Everybody's there present, and you know what? Transport didn't happen. Transport didn't come through. And that hearing now has to be reset for another date because the logistics of getting the party there to handle the hearing couldn't occur. I see all these inefficiencies, and I view Senate Bill 344 as a solid, as a reasonable, as a protective measure to utilize technology to address those inefficiencies, to deliver justice to the people of the state. I don't read this bill and see any erosion of constitutional protections. I don't view this as a means by which a criminal defendant is going to be forced into some outcome. But just to take that a step further, when I used to be a prosecutor, you have to remember you're not just duty bound to do justice in the case, do justice on behalf of your client, the state, but you're also responsible to make sure that the defendant receives a fair hearing, that he or she receives a fair judicial disposition, because you know that our Constitution holds all officers of the court to these standards, and on top of that, you know that an appellate court's going to review whatever's taking place in court. And if there's any erosion or taking away from that, that's going to be known, and that case is going to be right back before you. You just think through the potential for a defendant to say, Judge, I want to be seen. I know I'm on a calendar to have a video conference with you for post-sentence proceedings in line 31 to 33. So the person who's been convicted is in prison and says, no, judge, I want to have my proceeding held in front of you. Why would a judge not grant that to ensure that there is an appellate basis later arguing that I didn't have a fair hearing because I wasn't present for the proceeding? I'd submit to you that most are going to say an opportunity to get before a judge in an expeditious manner is a way to deliver justice, and that's something I'm going to support. Folks want to get in front of judges, in my experience. If they don't, it's because they don't like what's going to happen when they get in front of a judge. But this gives an opportunity to get in front of the judge, make the facts known, make the arguments heard, so that the case can be resolved. I just repeat what I said earlier. Justice delayed is justice denied. Senate Bill 344 is a means by which to deliver justice to better help the people of our state. This isn't an erosion of constitutional protections. The ability to appear in court is not only continues to be the case, but is unchanged by this measure. This is not going to change a court proceeding for trial one bit. And I'd encourage your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 344 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines and call the roll.
Alexander, Anulowicz, Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokus, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Abstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, Laricchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkle, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Watson, Washburn, Welch, Werkheiser, Wiedauer, Williams A., Williamson, Yerda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernal, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D, Jones S, Jones T, Jones V, Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Mora B, Morrissey, Morris M, Nelson, Wen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaux, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M, Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
No.
Bonner,
No.
Buckner,
No.
Burchett, Caldwell,
No.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
No.
Dickerson,
No.
Dukes,
No.
Gamble,
Yes.
Gilliard,
No.
Gordon,
No.
Green,
Yes.
Gullett,
Yes.
Jones, J.B.,
No.
Kirby,
Yes.
Lott,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Metz,
No.
Momtahan,
Yes.
Park, Pruitt,
Yes.
Rogers, Singleton, Stovall,
No. No.
Williams R,
Yes.
Benton, Blackman, Donahue, Gardner, Jones T, Morris M, Pullen, Silcox, Tanner,
Members will look at the board, make sure it is correct. Members will look at the board. All right, Mr. Clerk, you may lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 3344. The ayes are 82, the nays are 82. This bill, having failed to receive the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore failed. What purpose does the Majority Whip Kelly rise?
To make a motion?
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to serve notice of a motion to reconsider to Senate Bill 344.
The time for the motion is now. So the question before this body is whether this House will reconsider its action in failing to give a constitutional majority to Senate Bill 344. All those in favor of the motion for reconsideration will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine and call the roll.
Alexander, Anulowicz, Barr, Barton, Belton.
Just a minute, Mr. Clerk. It's important that the clerk be able to hear responses. So I'm going to ask that you cease conversation until we get this roll call in. You may continue.
Barr, Barton, Belton, Bennett, Bentley, Benton, Beverly, Blackman, Bodie, Bruce, Burns, Carpenter, Carson, Chokas, Clark H., Collins, Cooper, Corbett, Dempsey, Dickey, Dollar, Drenner, Dubnik, Efstration, England, Irwin, Fleming, Fry, Gaines, Gardner, Gravely, Harrell, Hatchett, Hawkins, Hitchens, Holcomb, Holmes, Houston, Hughley, Jackson M., Jaspers, Jones J., Kelly, Kendrick, Knight, LaHood, LaRicchia, Lumsden, Martin, Mathiak, McCall, Morris G., Newton, Nix, Oliver, Parrish, Parsons, Petrie, Perkel, Powell, Reeves, Rhodes, Rich, Ridley, Rutledge, Scoggins, Setzler, Silcox, Smith L., Smith R., Smith V., Smyrie, Stevens R., Tankersley, Tanner, Tarvin, Taylor, Thomas E., Trammell, Washburn, Watson, Welch, Werkheiser, Williams A., Williamson, Yerda, Allen, Bazemore, Bernau, Cannon, Carter, Clark D., Clark J., Cook, Davis, Douglas, Dreyer, Donahue, Earhart, Evans, Frazier, Gilligan, Gertler, Henson, Hill, Hogan, Holland, Holly, Hobson, Howard, Hutchinson, Jackson D., Jones S., Jones T., Jones V., Couch, Kennard, Lopez Romero, Marin, McLean, McLaurin, McLeod, Meeks, Mitchell, Moore B., Moore C., Morris M., Nelson, Huen, Paris, Prince, Pullen, Robichaux, Saints, Schofield, Scott, Shannon, Sharper, Smith M., Thomas A.M., Turner, Walensky, Wilkerson, Williams M.F., Williams N., Wilson, Beasley Teague,
No.
Bonner,
Yes.
Buckner,
No.
Burchett, Caldwell,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cantrell,
Yes.
Dickerson,
No.
Dukes,
No.
Gamble,
Yes.
Gilliard,
No.
Gordon,
No.
Green,
Yes.
Gullett,
Yes.
Jones, J.B.,
Yes.
Kirby,
Yes.
Lott,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Metz,
No.
Momtahan,
Yes.
Park, Pruitt,
Yes.
Rogers, Singleton,
Yes.
Stovall,
No.
Williams R.,
Yes.
Allen, Davis, Jaspers, Jones V., Morris G., Pullen, Smith L., Tanner, Tarvin, Thomas A.M., Wiedauer, Williamson.
All right, members will look and be sure that the board is accurate. The clerk will lock the machines. On the motion for reconsideration, the ayes are 94, the nays are 71. This House has reconsidered its action in failing to give a constitutional majority to Senate Bill 344, and that bill will go back on the general calendar now. If you have signed up for an announcement, make your way to the front of the chamber. The chair wants to call your attention to, you have on your desk or at your seat your agree, disagree folders. Okay, they're on the tables, I understand. You need to get one of those, put your name on it, and hang on to it, because that's the only one you'll get, and you're going to need it today and tomorrow and Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and so be sure and get one of those. Chair recognizes Chairman Lynn Smith for an announcement.
Good afternoon, everyone, and this is to clarify that the Natural Resources and Environment Committee will be meeting upon adjournment, which is now, in room 506 CLOB, to consider Senate Bill 384. Senate Bill 384, 506 CLOB upon adjournment.
Madam Chair, that's actually going to be upon recess. We're coming back.
Well, I was being hopeful, Mr. Speaker, but I understand.
Hey, can't blame a lady for trying, can you? Chair recognizes the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Harrell, for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will also meet upon recess, and 406 CLOB will be taking up Senate Bill 375.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Transportation Committee will meet upon recess in 606 CLOB, taking up the road naming bill. Please come so we can get that taken care of. Thank you.
This House will be in recess for committees and lunch until 2:30 p.m.